you don't recognise me, I'm the face that's been popping up there after Sue, and I've made a mental note already to go back and airbrush out the neck wrinkles. I mean, I didn't expect to be on a screen that big. So hi, I'm Mike. I'm going to be talking about In Data We Trust. That's my website. I used to put a Twitter handle on there. It's now called X. I don't. So any links to me you can find via that. Where to start? Well, I'm going to talk about trust. So why should you trust me? Why am I the person that stood up here talking about trust? Sue did a great job this morning of going through like her inspirational journey to where she's got to. And I did this about a week ago. My journey is nowhere near as inspirational, so I apologise in advance for the slightly boring start bit. I went to school, then went to university. At university, I ran a nightclub, didn't really do very well, and then realised that I wanted to work in the environment. So decided to go and try and get a job with the Environment Agency in the UK. So I did that. I thought, brilliant, I'm going to save the world. No, I get a van, some some waste management licenses, and get sent out around the south of Essex to go and regulate waste landfill sites. So there's me getting paid bugger all, walking around. Oh, that's one of the words I wasn't supposed to use. Sorry. There's me not getting paid very much, wandering around landfill sites, knowing full well that the people that were running them had dogs and guns, and I was getting, it wasn't great. So I tried to get out of that as fast as possible. But I realised whilst doing that I had a special skill that other people that I was working with didn't have, which is I could actually read licenses. So quite a lot of people, when they see a data licence go, or any licence, they just ignore it and don't read the legalese, don't really understand what it means. I was a bit sad and a bit geeky, and I kind of got it. This is the first time I've done this presentation, and I've got some notes here just to remind me what I was going to say. I was doing the landfill sites thing, and then I got into working with different government organisations to share data between them. So the Environment Agency shared data with the Geological Survey, and in that process, there was a transaction that needed to be negotiated. It was a very interesting time because the Geological Survey were charging the Environment Agency for their data. We didn't charge for data to them, but we wanted to basically make it cost neutral. So I came up with a very clever way of valuing data to make it equivalent. So basically, whatever they charged, that was exactly the value of the data they took from us, be it one data set or 100. So that was quite an interesting little project. I ended up running a bit of business within the Environment Agency that licensed data for commercial reuse. So it licensed it out to the conveyancing market, flood data mainly. People were using that to make decisions on property purchases. That business was making about £5 million a year. I then was involved in switching it off. So in 2015, 2016, or maybe 2016, 2017, there was a lot of storms and a lot of flooding. And the government at that point put a lot of pressure on the Environment Agency to say, you should just share this data so people can use it. And, rightly so. So I then had to renegotiate all the licenses that I'd been involved with to switch off the charging. That then meant that DEFRA, who the Environment Agency sits under, so the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs in the UK, got really interested in this data sharing thing and this open data thing. And then Liz Truss, and I'm not sure if anybody in the room's heard of Liz Truss, but she was the Secretary of State at the time, and she had one of her bright decisions to announce that we're going to release 8,000 new open data sets in a year. Bearing in mind, up until that point, I think there was 80 data sets that had been shared, all under these complex licenses. So it basically was designed to crush the system. How can we break the system to actually get this data out of the organisation? Long story short, 13,000 data sets were released in a year. Lots and lots and lots of working with people, developing trust, building things up. I left DEFRA. The main reason I left DEFRA, well, actually, I was on secondment from the Environment Agency, and the main reason was my post was paid for by the £5 million worth of income. So by switching it off, no job. Which actually worked out all right, because then I went to work for the Open Data Institute. Did some cool stuff there, one of which involved working in Ethiopia to help develop a data sharing policy, which is now law, and I've only ever seen it as law written in Amharic. And if you've not seen it, that's the kind of like little dancing figures language. So I have no idea what it says, but I'm pretty sure that I was involved in that. And more recently, I've been a contractor, and I've worked for the Gates Foundation. I'm working at the moment for the Department of Levelling Up, so I can't talk about the election or anything like that. And I've worked for the Agritech Centres in the UK. Out of all of that, that was interesting, and that's probably the most notes I've got, so I apologise for reading those, because I hate doing that. But the key learning out of all that is data's infrastructure. It's a really, really important thing that exists. It's really valuable. It's very hard to value, but it's really valuable. If you need it and you haven't got it, it's usually expensive. But data needs to be used and shared to achieve and get the value out of it. And that flow of data is completely reliant on trust, which was a really long way of saying, this is why you should trust me. So now you can probably see that I'm breathing heavily and starting to get a bit hot. So what I'm going to do is get everybody else to stand up. Please, can you all stand up? And what I would like you to do is somebody that you don't know that's near you, can you just talk to them for a minute about that? What is trust? Can you come up with an explanation of what you think trust is? So it's a minute from now, and I'll shout. Go. Right, you've got about 20 seconds, so just make sure you've got your point across. Okay, thank you. What's really good is to hear the buzz of the conversation. It's reassuring that you're actually listening to me and not asleep. Still talking. Can everybody sit down now just? We'll come back. That's brilliant. Thank you. I do realise a minute is not very long, so it was a bit longer than that, but thank you for doing that. So my question to the room, and I'm not expecting anyone to necessarily shout out an answer, but nods and groans. How easy is it to describe what trust is?
Easy.
Easy? Brilliant. Tell me what you got.
Well, there's two letters in, or there's a word inside. There's a word inside there that calls.
Sorry.
There's a word inside that says us.
Oh, I like it.
And there's also if you didn't have an E on true, there's a true us.
So I like that. Thank you for that. I'm going to nick it and use it next time.
Well, this guy had a better reason.
No.
This is the dictionary definition, or a dictionary definition. So the belief that you can trust someone or something. Trust's important, right? It's pretty vague. I quite like high level and vague, as you'll see as we go through. I thought it was important to put the word fake, and to be fair, I pinched it off somebody else. But it's a great picture. It illustrates a point, and the point is, fake news is a thing, right? So this is the fake news guy, and what that's led to is all kinds of all kinds of different information, be it true or not, being put out there, which has led to like a polarized view of things. Like, it's called footballification. I don't know if you've heard of that, where it's just like one side against another. So I say this, doesn't matter whether it's true or not. If you're on my side, you'll believe it and go with it. It's an awful thing. there's other examples of where data has been misused. So I've got Cambridge Analytica down here. So I'm assuming people know about Cambridge Analytica. Lots of data used to help target in the last election or the one before that. So lots of stuff there about data being misused. There's been about misunderstandings around how data is used. So in the UK, we've had this thing where the NHS wanted to gather data from patients, lots of data from patients, but all anonymised, to then reuse it to do medical research. But the way that it was framed was so bad that nobody actually signed up and said that they could do it, or very few people did. And then the final little example I've got, which kind of illustrates misuse and bad use of data, is the hidden and unknown algorithms that kind of exist in our world. So I haven't, the example I've got here is, I don't know if you heard a story in the UK around the insurance market and car insurance, and depending on your first name, if all of the details are the same, depending on your first name, you would get a different insurance quote from a particular organisation because of the way that the algorithm worked and the bias that was within it. Not great. Untrustworthy. We've also got this. So I really want to move. So we've got AI at the moment. So Sue did a great talk about AI and touched on AI this morning. In my head, I'm not a data technical specialist. AI is about doing all of the stuff that we've been doing before, faster, harder, and actually quite a lot more opaquely. So the ChatGPT thing was brilliant, but it's magic. To someone like me, it's just magic. And we're expected to trust it, but we just don't understand it. And for me, that's a real problem. I think for all of us, it's a real problem. And now my phone's locked with my notes on it, so let's just unlock that. So that's so much better. So coming back to this, so the belief that you can trust someone or something. The key word for me in there is the belief bit. So trust is around a feeling that you can have. It's about how a situation or person, an organisation makes you feel. It's really, really difficult to gain trust if you've lost it. It's really, really easy to lose trust if you have it. So what is trustworthiness? You probably can guess what I'm going to do now. And please, this time, after I've asked you to stand up and start talking, when I start shouting again, can you stop? Because last time it was a bit hard. So what I would like you to do now is, again, stand up, find somebody else that you've not spoken to before. And this time, can you... I know, before you stand up, I'm going to ask you a different question. Can you stand up if you think you're trustworthy? Can you find somebody that you didn't speak to before, and can you explain to them why you're trustworthy? I'm going to give you another minute. About 10 more seconds. Okay, thank you. If you could grab your seats, I would appreciate it. So I can see who's not trustworthy from my perspective because they're still talking. So, was that easy to do? Was it easy to explain why you were trustworthy? And clearly people know if they say yes, no, I'm going to ask them to say why.
Very trustworthy because everyone means most and just modest means to the others.
Wow, I'm sorry. I will note that down for the next time I do this. So, this is the definition, right? So, the definition of trustworthiness is you're deserving of trust. The key word is deserving, I think, in this. And just sort of like putting this into the context of why we're here and the things that we're talking about, organisations want to be trusted. Organisations want to show that they're trustworthy, especially when it comes to handling data and data moving around. But these things are feelings, and they're really hard to measure. And Sue got there first. The post office. So this is a really good example of a data trust issue that has had massive human consequences and is still going on now. So I think everybody probably knows what was going on here. There was a data system, it was implemented, people were doing things within that data system, people didn't understand the processes, they weren't sharing the processes, and then they weren't honest about what they were doing. So that's how bad it can get. But actually, what I want to talk about a bit now is about building trust. And this is a picture of an event I did in Ethiopia. And apologies for those who heard me waffling on about this last night. So this was a room, not unlike this, a bit smaller. And when I got in there in the morning, it was set up with rows of desks like a classroom. And all of these people sat down, got their laptops out, and then at the front, I did this, which I don't like doing, as you can tell. Lunchtime came, and over the lunch break, I shifted all of the tables out, moved all of their stuff, and got them back into the room. The reason I did that is within Ethiopia, the different regions sometimes do and sometimes don't get on. This was about a data sharing policy for the whole country. And in this room are people from all of the regions. So this was about, let's break down those barriers. Let's get people talking to each other, and let's sort of start to co-create things. I'm going to let you into a secret now. I'm actually starting to really panic. It's really weird. I've never done this before. Hey, yeah. So in this environment, we actually co-created that data sharing policy that I was mentioning earlier. The key bit in here for me is about, in order to build trust, you need to be open and transparent about what you're doing. So here I've given you some guidance and things to do. You've done them. There were rules. You followed them. I tried to enforce them. And all of those things are really important when developing trust. But for me, the key bit is those rules need to be understood by everyone, and everyone needs to play by those rules. An example, who in this room's got a pension? Put your hands up. Most people. Who in this room knows exactly what your pension's invested in? I thought there would be a few, but it's not everybody, right? So actually, you've already got a transaction here with your pension provider where you've told them some stuff around the money that you've given them, and they invest that money in the things that you've asked them to, and you trust that they do it. So for me, this is a good example of organisations that you have trust in. What would be interesting is to know the people that you put your hands up. This isn't a real question, this is rhetorical. The people that put your hands up, do you not trust your pension provider, or are you really interested in finance? But that's not a question. So building data trust is about, for me, it's about data being valued as an asset. Data has worth, but it's really hard to understand what that worth is. The value especially in financial terms. So personal data has a personal value. It might not have a very high financial value. The key bit here is, though, data is managed in this kind of transparent and open way. And I did a piece of work with the Open Data Institute at the end of last year. And what we put together from their 10 years of research is a series of data practices which kind of describe at a really high level, back to this kind of generic and high level terminology, describe these are the things that you need to think of in any data or any organisation actually, but they're written in such a way that senior leaders can understand what these words mean and ask questions of their data people. So people usually go straight to privacy. GDPR exists, it's a bit of legislation, people understand it. But actually, people miss out, well, what's the accountability structure around that? Oh, we've got a data protection officer. That's great, but who on the senior leadership team is accountable? How do we understand they're accountable? And how does that person, who might not be a data person, ask questions of the business? But again, the two key words on all of these is the open and transparent bit. If you've got an open and transparent set of processes, everyone understands the game. Everybody understands what you're doing, and it makes it so much easier to generate and build trust because you're working in that open and transparent way. This one finally got to the Crocs. What this is really all about is we're all data people. Everyone in this room is a data person. Everyone everywhere is a data person. So we need to treat ourselves as we would treat, so we treat others as we would want to be treated ourselves. We need to walk in the shoes of the people that we're working with. That transparency and openness is really critical in being able to explain what it is we're doing and how we're doing it. Just check notes. Did I say anything else about Crocs? No, I didn't. So kind of finishing off, and I've overrun, so sorry about that, but I just wanted to say this thing about how strange things can happen. So when we started sharing data at the Environment Agency, one of the key things that we were sharing was topography data that was used to build things like this, which is a rather fancy flood defence. So this top bit is a glass panel, so you can actually see the river water there and see how close it is to the top when you're in trouble. That topography data is down to about 5 centimetres resolution in some instances, so it's pretty accurate. It's been used for all kinds of different things, and one of my favourites is citizen science around archaeology. It's not a money maker, it's not great, but actually, not great, it is great, but it's not a money maker. So there's hundreds of citizen scientists in the UK now using that data, which now they can get access to because it's shared in a trusted, open, fair way. They've identified henges, roads, all kinds of different ancient monuments that previously would just be ploughed it back into the ground. And I think that's kind of where I wanted to end. So for me, just the final words is, trustworthiness is all about transparency for organisations, being really clear about what it is you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're doing it will start to build the trust with other people that you're working with. Thank you very much.